Hi everyone, I'm Helen from Susan's family. Today I'm bringing you the Cozy Critters kitten version. It's divided into two main parts, the main part and decorations. First, crochet the main part. Once completed, make and attach the decorations. Let's start crocheting the main part. Begin with a chain stitch, then work in rounds for a section. After that, work back and forth. Let's take a look at the chart. In the chart, R plus number indicates the round number. H plus number indicates the row number. The increases and decreases explanation column shows the stitch techniques needed when crocheting the current round. It also explains any increasing or decreasing. The total stitches column shows the total number of stitches after completing all stitch patterns for that round. The stitch techniques used include chain, CH, F double crochet, FB double crochet increase, and slip stitch. Next, please watch my demonstration of the specific crocheting method. The yarn used for the main part here is special. This yarn has longer fibers. It's hard to see the stitches clearly when crocheting. I'll first demonstrate the crocheting method using cotton yarn. Then I'll explain the using the corresponding yarn. Everyone can learn the method first, or practice with easier to see yarn. After learning, you can use the corresponding yarn for crocheting. Also, the yarn color here is random. For specific yarn, color schemes and hook sizes, please refer to the detail page of our product and paper instructions. First, let's cast on. The chart shows 3ch, which means the casting on method is foundation chain. Then cast on 3 stitches. Let's start with a foundation chain. Pick up the yarn with your right hand. Wrap it around your left little finger once. Pass through between middle finger and index finger. Pinch the yarn tail with your left middle finger and thumb. Pick up the crochet hook with your right hand. The hook moves between these 2 points. Position the hook underneath the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Then position the hook to the left of the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Pull the yarn through the loop. Tighten the yarn tail. Note: keep the loop on the hook slightly loose for easier crocheting later. This slip knot does not count as a stitch. You can also begin with a slip knot method. Cross the yarn tails. Then from underneath the loop, pull the yarn tail through. Then place the slip knot loop onto the crochet hook. Adjust slightly. Hang the yarn with your left hand using the previous method. Now begin crocheting chain stitches. Yarn over. Pull through. 1 chain stitch is done. On this chain stitch, pick up the V-shaped loop. Pick up both strands of the chain stitch. Place a stitch marker to mark it. Continue yarn over. Pull through. This is the second stitch. You need to crochet 3 stitches here in total. Crochet 1 more stitch. The starting chain is now completed. 1 chain on the hook represents 1 stitch. The loop on the hook is not counted in the stitch count. The starting chain explanation is finished. Begin the first round. R1 is DC12, which means starting from the third chain from the end. The number before DC indicates how many double crochets to make. Here it means to crochet 12 double crochets. First find the position of the third chain from the end, which is actually the first chain of the starting chain. Verify by counting from right to left. 1, 2, 3. It's still this chain stitch. So we insert the hook into the chain space, where the stitch marker is placed. Work 1 double crochet, first the loop on the hook, which means inserting into this braid. Place a stitch marker to mark it. Pay attention not to include the yarn being crocheted in the marker. Then yarn over once. Insert into the corresponding position. Yarn over and draw through. There are 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops, leaving 2 loops. Continue to yarn over and draw through in once. Completed the double crochet. Here is the marker spot. The V-shaped loop is the stitch of the double crochet. 1 stitch represents 1 DC. Continue to pick up the same position. Work 11 double crochets. I'll demonstrate the technique for double crochet again. Yarn over. Insert the hook. Yarn over and draw through. Then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. Repeat twice. Once. Twice. Complete the double crochet. Continue with 10 double crochets. One stitch. Two stitches. Three stitches. Nine stitches. 10 stitches. Plus the previous 2 stitches. A total of 12 double crochets completed. Check the stitch count after finishing. The stitch pattern corresponding to the chart is now complete. Remove the stitch marker at the insertion point. Finally, at the stitch of the first double crochet, which is the position marked by the stitch marker. Work 1 slip stitch to join. Insert. Yarn over and pull through. Pull through all loops on the hook in once. Complete the slip stitch. The braid on the upper right here is the braid of the slip stitch. The slip stitch doesn't count as one stitch. You need to tighten its braid. Then tighten the loops on the hook. This makes the right side braid smaller. The slip stitch is not indicated in the form. Actually, when crocheting in rounds, always finish by joining with a slip stitch and tighten. Here the starting tail of the yarn is not handled yet. It can be used to distinguish the right and wrong sides. The side with the starting yarn tail is the wrong side of the fabric. And the stitch texture is relatively blurry. Vice versa is the right side. Now the first round is complete. Next, crochet round 2. R2 is 2CH, 12 DC2 in 1. DC2 in 1 means double crochet increase. The number before it indicates how many double crochet increases to make. Here it means to crochet 12 double crochet increases. Continue with the yarn from the previous round. First, make 2 chain stitches as the beginning chain. 1, 2. Here the turning chain doesn't count as one stitch, not included in the total stitch count. Then pick up the entire loop on the hook and place a marker. So after completing the corresponding stitches, the marker position will exactly be at the corresponding stitch position. Insert into the marker spot from the previous round. Where you previously joined with a slip stitch, make a double crochet 2 in 1, which means work 2 double crochets in the same stitch position. One stitch. At this point the marker indicates the stitch position. Continue crocheting 2 stitches. Complete the double crochet increase. Here you can remove the marker. Continue picking up the left stitch in the following rounds. Work a double crochet 2 in 1. After completing this, you'll need to work 10 more double crochet increases downward. Work each stitch by making 2 double crochets per stitch. Complete the last double crochet increase. Check the stitch count. Note that the turning chain doesn't count as one stitch. The total stitches for each round are indicated in the corresponding chart. I won't mention this again later. Finally, at the marked position, work 1 slip stitch to join. Insert. Yarn over and pull through. Pull through all loops on the hook. Complete the slip stitch. Tighten the braid as well. The second round is complete. Work round 3 next. Chain 2 as beginning chain. The following chart is FFV X1 2. The parentheses here indicate a group. The multiplication indicates the number of times to repeat the pattern. Work 1 double crochet. Pay attention to marking before crocheting. Pick up loops to mark before working each stitch. I won't remind you repeatedly later. Insert into the marked stitch of the previous round and crochet accordingly. Remove the stitch marker after completing it. Work 1 double crochet 2 in 1 next. One group, FFV, is completed. I'll demonstrate again. Work 1 double crochet first. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. This is the second time. Repeat FFV 10 more times. Always work 1 double crochet 2 in 1 method. Pick up the marked position and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Now work the fourth round. Chain 2 to begin. Work the stitch pattern inside the parentheses. Work 1 double crochet. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. Followed by 1 double crochet. FFV, F is completed. I'll demonstrate again. 1 double crochet. 1 double crochet 2 in 1. One double crochet. This is the second time. Then continue to repeat the stitch pattern inside the parentheses. Work the required number of times. Once all are completed, join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The fourth round is done. Move on to the fifth round. Work even for this round. Chain 2 as beginning chain. Then pick up stitches matching one stitch to another and work double crochets. Check the stitch count after finishing. Same stitch count as the previous round. Then pick up the marked position and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The 5th round is completed. For the remaining part, work back and forth, meaning no need to join with a slip stitch at the end. Continue the numbering sequence from before. Next will be the 6th row. Chain 2 as beginning chain. Here the beginning chain corresponds to the previous round's beginning chain. The chart shows turn, indicating to turn the fabric. Turn counterclockwise. Then pick up stitches to the left. Work the corresponding number of double crochets. Continue all the way to the position before the previous round's beginning chain, which is the position marked by the stitch marker. Complete the marked position. At this point the row is finished. No need to join with a slip stitch. This creates an opening at the beginning and end. Row 6 is complete. Here you can remove the stitch marker. Then work row 7. Using the same method, start with 2 chain stitches as beginning chain. Then turn the fabric. Starting from the first stitch at the edge going downward, work a double crochet into each stitch in sequence. Continue all the way to the position next to the previous row's beginning chain, right before the opening. When you reach the beginning chain of the previous row, no need to crochet. The stitch count for this row is identical to the previous row. At this point row 7 is completed. For the remaining rows, continue crocheting using the same method as row 7. Simply complete the required number of rows. When counting row numbers or round numbers here, count each raised texture like this. Each raised texture represents one round or one row. The swatch now has 7 raised textures. When you run out of yarn while crocheting, I'll demonstrate the method using this swatch. Pay attention, always join yarn on a double crochet. First work an incomplete double crochet, yarn over once on the hook. Insert the hook. Yarn over and pull through. Then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops, leaving 2 loops on the hook. That's an incomplete double crochet. Then pick up the new yarn. Leave a little yarn tail. Yarn over and pull through. Completed the double crochet, and completed joining the yarn. Tie a knot to secure both yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric. Leave the yarn tails on the wrong side for now. Continue crocheting downward normally. This is the method for joining yarn. Continue working the remaining parts by referring to the chart. After completing all, you need to cut the yarn. Here I'll demonstrate the method. First secure with 1 chain stitch. Leave a little yarn tail. Cut the yarn. Pull tight. Hide the yarn tail to the wrong side of the fabric, which is the side with the starting yarn tail. Tuck it in following the texture of the fabric. You can weave in a few more stitches. Handle all yarn tails using the same method. Simply tuck them into the fabric. Complete this part on your own. Now the crocheting method for the main part is explained. Next I'll use the original yarn to explain things to pay attention to while crocheting. First is casting on. The yarn is hard to see here. Be mindful during your crocheting process. Crochet slower. First follow the demonstration method used with cotton yarn. Chain cast on. Then make 3 chains. After completing the first chain, feel it. The loop below the hook is the first chain stitch. You can feel a small hole by touching it with your hand. Place a stitch marker on the first stitch. We'll directly place it into the hole. Continue crocheting chains. 2 stitches. 3 stitches. Let's feel the chain stitches again. When touching continuously, there's a bump between every 2 chain stitches. The indented small hole is where the chain stitch is. Now the casting on is completed. Next, pick up the first chain stitch hole position. Crochet 12 double crochets. Since it's hard to find stitches later, mark every stitch here. First on the loop on the hook. Insert a stitch marker. To easily distinguish the marker spot, on our first marker, add another stitch marker. So the stitch position with 2 stitch markers is the first stitch. Pick down to the first chain stitch marker spot. Work 1 double crochet. When crocheting here, feel as you work. Crochet slowly. Yarn over. Insert. Yarn over and pull through. If you want it looser, pull the yarn longer. Conversely, pull the yarn shorter. Check or feel it. 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. Two loops left. Yarn over and draw through in once. This completes 1 double crochet. The stitch marker marks this position. Which is the stitch of this double crochet? Feel the marked spot with your hands. It's a small dent. The lower left side feels hard. This is the post of the double crochet. The upper right side feels softer. This is the double crochet stitch. Place a stitch marker on the loop on the hook. Then in the same insertion position, work 1 double crochet. Before each subsequent stitch, place a marker on the entire loop on the hook. The second marker position is the stitch of the second double crochet. Continue to complete the remaining stitches. Now there are 3 stitch markers. That's 3 stitches done. After completing, check the stitch count. Simply count the number of stitch markers here. The position of the 2 markers is the first stitch. Then remove the marker from the previous insertion point. At this point the stitch pattern in the chart is completed. Moving down to the position with 2 stitch markers. Join with a slip stitch. Insert into the hole of the stitch marker. Insert the hook and crochet. Pull tight after completing. The first round is complete. To make it convenient for checking the round count later, place a stitch marker in any stitch on this side. Continue crocheting the second round. Chain 2 as beginning chain. Then work double crochet 2 in 1 at the position with 2 stitch markers underneath. Work double crochet 2 in 1. This round still requires marking every stitch. Place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch position. Work correspondingly. Complete the corresponding position of the stitch marker. Remove the stitch marker underneath. Pick up the stitch marker positions from the previous round below. Work double crochet 2 in 1 evenly. When reaching the position with 2 stitch markers, check the stitch count at this point. The stitch count in the chart is complete. Then at the first stitch, which is the position with 2 stitch markers, join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. This completes round 2. Similarly, mark any one stitch in this round. You can feel it here. Mark one stitch above the corresponding position of the previous round's marker, convenient for later checking. The following round 3 uses the same technique. After completing the beginning chain, follow the chart to work the corresponding stitches. Place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch position. Place 1 stitch marker for each stitch worked afterward. Finish the stitch corresponding to the position below. After finishing, you can remove the stitch markers. Once you're more comfortable with crocheting, you don't need to mark every stitch. For example, mark every 3 stitches, or mark every 5 stitches. Here I'll demonstrate round 3, using the method of marking every 5 stitches. First make the beginning chain. Then follow the chart to work 4 stitches. Still place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch. Now 4 stitches are completed. Mark the position of the 5th stitch downward. Continue using the same method afterward. Work 4 stitches and finish. Pay attention that the stitch just completed is the position of the 5th stitch. Work 4 stitches forward from this stitch. Mark the next stitch after finishing. left side of the previous stitch marker to the current stitch marker position. That's 5 stitches. You can also feel it with your fingers, or gently part the fibers. You'll see a general braid pattern. Continue crocheting using this method afterward. And if the stitches you've already worked on are unclear about what stitch was made, you can feel it with your fingers. There's only one firm fabric strand, which is the stitch post. That's 1 stitch. Below in a chain space, pulling through 2 stitch posts, which is an increase. After completing the last stitch marker of the previous round, remove the stitch marker, moving down to the second stitch marker position at the first stitch. Now check the stitch count. Starting from the second stitch marker on the left side, there are 5 stitches between stitch markers. Let's count the number of stitch markers. There are 7 stitch markers here, meaning up to this marker position. There are a total of 35 stitches, plus the last stitch crocheted, making 36 stitches in total, matching the stitch count on the chart. Finally, at the 2 stitch marker positions, which is the first stitch, join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Mark each round after completing it. Similarly, mark above the previously marked position. If stitch markers run out later, you can use other colors for marking. Cut a piece of yarn, then from the position that needs marking, pick up approximately corresponding 1 stitch. Draw the yarn through. Then tie a knot with the yarn tail. This is the method of marking with yarn tails. For the fourth round afterward, you can crochet following the marking method of the third round. If you really can't find the exact position, we can work within a specific area. Crochet the corresponding number of stitches. Slight deviation in the insertion point within the corresponding area is okay. Here I'll demonstrate the method using the fourth round. First, make a beginning chain. In the previous round, there are 5 stitches between my stitch markers. So I just need to insert the hook into 5 positions between them. Refer to the chart for the stitch pattern. Complete this area first. Meanwhile, during this round of crocheting, still mark every 3 or every 5 stitches. I'll continue marking every 5 stitches. Work 1 double crochet first. The first stitch here always needs to be marked, and it's distinguished with 2 stitch markers. Work a double crochet increase downward. Insert the hook into the small hole here. Pay attention to the small hole near the fabric edge. Part the fibers to check. You can faintly see a braid-like texture. Continue crocheting 1 double crochet downward. Then mark it. Work 1 double crochet in the adjacent stitch. When reaching the stitch marker position later, correspondingly make a double crochet increase. In this end area, we picked 5 stitch positions for insertion. Then repeat this process. Continue crocheting. Insert the hook into roughly corresponding small holes. When counting stitches, you can also check by feeling the small holes. Take it slow while crocheting. The insertion points can be roughly matched up. Finish the corresponding number of stitches. Now you've reached the beginning position. Let's check. If you make a mistake in stitch techniques while crocheting, it's okay, as long as the stitch count matches the total stitches. Slip stitch at the starting position. Pull tight. The fourth round is done. Once you get more comfortable with crocheting, you can also feel it. The fabric will have a bumpy texture. The raised part that feels firm is one round. The dent is the chain space. We can also count the chain spaces. One chain space represents one round. Since every iron's tension varies, after completing the fourth round, compare the dimensions with the chart. If the size differs significantly, it's recommended to adjust your tension and crochet again. For the next fifth round, work evenly. The stitch markers in the upper and lower rounds align perfectly. Then follow the back and forth method. All rounds are worked evenly. You can mark the first stitch of every row and every round. When crocheting back and forth, end at the first marked stitch of the previous row, indicating the end of a row. If the yarn runs out while crocheting, you can join yarn using an incomplete stitch. The method is identical to the cotton yarn demonstration. Finally, fasten off the yarn after completing, and hide all yarn tails to the wrong side of the fabric. This completes the crochet method for the original yarn. At this point, the main part is fully explained.